Okay, so just a little bit about me. I'm working with Dora and the team at Think, and we've given a few talks already. I've been on the mailing list lurking for quite a bit longer, so you'll see me as AK Grant 0710 rather than Alistair at Think. Okay, we're done? I'm still talking? I'm still here? I'll keep on going. Rightio. So everyone's familiar with the typical object inspector. We've got the raw view there. It shows you the internal state. It's a bit hard, as been mentioned before, to figure out what's really going on when you're just given all of this information. The idea, of course, is that if we've got custom views for every object, then it becomes obvious pretty quickly what it is that we're really looking at, whether that's a fraction, Bezier curve, string, file reference, whatever. So let's just take a slightly closer look at one of these. What we've got here is, this is an object representing a Firefox browser. And it loads up all the cookies, loads up page visits. And one of the things we can do then is analyze the cookies and decide how long do those cookies last. And we're interested in this for various privacy reasons, which is a hot topic at the moment. So if we look at what's happened to what I've been looking at in the last few days, most of those cookies are valid for well over a year. So advertisers actually like tracking what I'm doing for a long time. They don't want to know just now. And if we look at the way that what you have to do to get that view in Faro is just write what we've got here, this small method. And so the important characteristics of this are that it's fairly short. It's only 8 lines of code, roughly. We just tell it what the title is, the priority, and give it the data. And since it's a circular pack, it knows how to display it, and away we go. And it's this fact that this is cheap to write means that we can create a lot of custom views and present each object in the way that best suits that particular object in that context. And so that's what's giving us the power of explaining and exploring our system. So obviously the rest of the world hasn't caught on to Faro yet, so we have to deal with systems other than that. So we'd like to be able to extend the same explorability and explainability to other systems. So if we have a look here, we've got the same view. It's still the same concept. It's looking at a browser, except in this case it's just using a bit of dummy data, so that's why you're getting the undefined and different values. But the way that is being sent back to Faro to be presented is just as a simple JSON string. And you can see there, it's the same thing. There's not much to it. It says what sort of view it is, a circular pack view. It says what the priority is, the title, and it just then includes the data, and it can be displayed. So the question then is how hard is this to introduce to another system like a JavaScript implementation? So what we've got here is the actual code that implements the browser. And if we go down and have a look near the bottom, it just happens to be there. And so it's the same thing. This is the code here. So once again, it's about 8 lines of code. It's saying that we're using circular pack view, gives it the title, the priority, and then the data to be displayed. So what's important about this is that it's still short. It's easy to add this to any particular class that we've implemented in JavaScript. The circular pack view can be used generically, and in fact we can add all the different types of views that we've got. So whether that's column, a simple thing like a list or text or a column list, or more complicated things like a Mondrian view, which is somewhat similar to Rosal. So we can do all sorts of animations. We can send back information saying we want you to display an animation, we want you to display a graph, we want you to display whatever it is. As long as we've got a declarative view for that, then it becomes trivial to add it to any sort of object. So the idea is to come up with all of these generic views, like the circular pack view. What's important is that Faro doesn't know anything about the class definition in JavaScript. They happen to be talking about the same things in terms of representing a browser, but their implementation is separate. So we don't have to transfer that across systems. The data or objects that has to be accessed, so the browser is actually accessing cookies and other information. All of that's just been gathered up within JavaScript. And once again, Faro doesn't understand any of that. All it knows is the resulting data that's coming back. And it doesn't actually know It doesn't have to know, based on the fact that it's a browser, how to display it. It's just being told to use the circular pack view. So once again, it doesn't have to understand the context. So all of this means that we're keeping the cost of developing this moldability and explainability and explorability really low. It's got a few other advantages. The project that we're working on actually is going to be fairly distributed. We're going to be using Faro as an interface, but it's going to be talking to a lot of different backends. We want different developers to be able to develop those backends in their own environment. So someone will be running on an iPhone or an Android or a PC or who knows what. So in those cases, we don't know what the development environment is going to be. In particular, there's a really high importance on security. Because this is all declarative, there's no code being transferred anywhere, so therefore there's no opportunity for remote code execution attacks. It also means that the client, Faro in this case, can adapt the display to suit the presentation, whether it's on a screen, on a laptop, on a phone, or however you want to do it. So the question then is, how much work is it to create, to be able to support these 8 lines of code? So if we have a look at this, this is the code in JavaScript that implements the ability to have a circular pack view. And it doesn't actually understand how to present the information. It doesn't know what it's going to look like. The important thing is just, how do I get that JSON to send back to Faro to do the display? And you can see if I just scroll down, we get to the bottom of the file really quickly. That's basically it. It's just, all it's doing is formatting the data in JSON and then sending it back. Yeah.
Sorry, I have a question. I don't understand why here I'm seeing some JavaScript code. Like, is this JavaScript code like being executed where?
Why? Okay, so the whole idea is that Faro, I've obviously missed the point. If we go back here, the idea is that Faro and the inspector is really useful because we can create custom views for every class, for every object. It can display itself in the way it should. It's not just...
That I understood, but...
Sorry?
I understood that. I mean, you have an object that describes Firefox, but...
Right. So what we will be able to do is export that same flexibility and moldability so that any remote system, which is class-based, we can say every class or every object there can also have that same ability to display itself in the appropriate way. And the important thing is that it can be done cheaply. Yeah, Doris, sorry.
So maybe with just to a bit of context, the idea here is, can we inspect a JavaScript object in the same way we can inspect a Faro object, but not see it only through the standard view that is just variables and values, but actually bring moldability when we're actually inspecting JavaScript objects. So what you're actually seeing on the screen is this is a Faro one, and this is an actual rendering on the left-hand side coming from a Node.js application live right now, and the code that generates this thing is written in JavaScript.
Yep, okay, no problem. It's okay. Yep, so the thing is that the importance is that the important part is that adding each of these views is very cheap. We only have to add 8 lines of code because there's lots of different classes in a complex system, whether it's JavaScript or whatever. So we want to be able to create these custom views for each of those different classes within that remote system. That part's good, but what happens if it becomes difficult to add the framework behind that? And the thing is, because all you're sending back is this JSON, all that's required, once again in JavaScript, because this is where the data is being formatted and the JSON's being created to be sent back to VisualWorks for display, is, I don't know, it's 20, 30 lines of code. So that part of it, because the thing is that there's lots of different views. There's circular pack views, we want to create graphs, we want to create lists, we want to have text, whatever it is, we want to be able to support all of those in our remote system. It's not a lot of effort to add each of those different types, and then each of those different types, which are generic, can be used in lots of different classes. So the incremental cost is quite small in each case. So the important thing there is that we've set up this framework in which the moldability and explainability and the exploration capabilities that we have within Faro can now be used in a distributed system and in systems that are written in other languages other than Faro. That's basically it. So any questions?
Hi, sorry, maybe I missed it. So you have a browser implemented inside Faro, the full-featured web browser?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Do you have a full-featured web browser implemented inside Faro?
No, we don't have, no.
Well, what it was showing is with the cookies and things.
Yeah, so what this is just inspecting an object. So effectively, I wonder if I can do this. So what I've got here is an object inspector. So this particular one is a Faro object. So I can go through and look at the list of cookies. I can look at the pages I've visited. And I can look at just the raw view. Okay, so this is just standard operations within Faro.
This data you imported from the browser, or
At the moment, this is all just within Faro, okay? So what I'll try and do, and probably have it blow up because I haven't practiced this, but we'll see how we go, is if I say, instead, I'm going to have a GT remote inspector client, new server. So, if I think here, where is it? So here's a little window. This is where the Node.js is running. So I've got a JavaScript application running, and it's got its own application there, which is the same thing. It's got the concept of a browser, and it's retrieved information about the browser, all of the cookies and the page visits, etc. So this is a remote system that we want to be able to look at. So what I can effectively do is start up an inspector on that. Sorry, try again. Okay, and I've got a number of different objects. I have a Firefox object, and I don't know what's happening there. Okay, it hasn't loaded it up, but basically you can see this is...
So you are getting it from Node.
This is all from Node
running.
now. So if you have a look at...
And this remote inspector, it's called remote inspector client.
So it's basically connecting to the Node.js application and using a REST API just to say, give me a list of root objects, that's Chrome, Firefox, and Safari. And then I'm now inspecting the Firefox object. If I look at the raw view, this is the basic thing. What it has is an ID and a name and some cookies. If I want to look at the proxy, because this is now saying, what's the internal state in Faro? This is a remote inspector proxy. It's got a name. This is the client that it's connecting through, and those accesses are actually the list of views. So these are the things that we're understanding. So if I now go and say, sorry, I'll go back here and have a look at cookies by validity. Not too sure why the extra data is not there, but this is what we're interested in as an end user, to be able to say, I want to understand what the validity period is. If I want to have a look at, sorry, here's this view. And internally, that has been sent back from the remote system by sending this JSON. That's what's been sent. So if I have a look at these, you can see here, this is, if I go in, well, you can see here's where it's asking for the validity map, which is the actual information that we're just looking at there. So now what I'm doing, so I've basically got an inspector running within Faro. Faro knows how to do, it's got the moldability, it knows how to display circular pack maps, it knows how to do the graphs and everything. And we've made it very cheap to go into JavaScript and say, I've got some classes there, how can I make the inspection of those more friendly?
I see, thank you.
Yep. Anything else? No? Okay, thank you very much.